What is up, Grinders? This is Bobby Firestone, Bobby Fi. I'm here with my man Grant Neefer, Genie from Pro 7. How you doing today, man?
Woo! Saturday, ready to party.
It's not too often I get to do shows with guys who I went out drinking with the night before, so nice to see you over here. Oh, sorry. I mean, going to bars. Let's just put it that way. Anyway, we got an interesting 8-game slate, and we're going to be doing some, just running down all the games on DraftKings. Ready to get started? All right, let's do it. We're going to start off with Minnesota at Charlotte. It's 209.5 over/under. I really like this game. There's a lot of players I like. Grant, who are the guys you think will start this game?
Well, I think the number one player I want to target is Sam. I mean, at that price, he hasn't really performed that well lately, and I expect it to change again or change in this matchup. I'm not really a huge fan of. There's a lot of good spots on this, but I think the ownership is a bunch of guys in the double digits, kind of staying away a lot from the ball. Not because I don't think they're good plays, but I think that it's one of those times where they're going to be too high on what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think in addition to the ownership, the pricing is a little bit high on most of the players on DraftKings. I think maybe you could take a shot on some of them, but I agree with you. I think that Kemba is the best play in this game, especially at 7,400. That's just, how do you not take him? I think he'll be pretty chalky, but even still, I'm going to have a hard time taking him in any of my lineups on DraftKings, cash or tournament. I'm going to try and do this as we go down the slate, but I think we should rank our top 5 plays in order per game. If the game's not significant, maybe we won't do it for that, but I know I've got my 5, but if you want to go ahead and take a shot, we know Kemba's your number 1.
Yeah, Kemba's number 1, probably Cat number 2, Michael Gilchrist number 3, Wiggins number 4, number 5. I mean, the difference between number 1 and number 2 is just drastic.
And I'm guessing that the kid Gilchrist has something to do with that 4,500 price. That's pretty juicy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's a funny game because the over/under is pretty low. It's not necessarily supposed to be this big high-scoring game, but there is pretty. I mean, you know, Tiff likes to stick with. We know who the production's going to come from. I'll say, I guess my guys in this lineup would be. I think I like Kemba number 1. I'll take Batum number 2. I would take Towns number 3. Then I would take Levine, and I have some interest in Gorgui Dieng.
Yeah, I think Dieng's in a real sneaky spot right now after nearly fouling out last night in 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yep, and and Bielica, I can never pronounce his name right, actually came off the bench and played pretty well, which kept him even further on the bench. But yeah, he almost fouled out in 18 minutes. His production hasn't been great lately. He's got a good matchup against a banged up Charlotte front court, so they're 23rd in the NBA defense versus position. So I actually think that he's got a really good spot tonight. And, this game could play out a lot of different ways. And, maybe even if you're playing a bunch of lineups, you take a shot on Rubio. But I don't know if that's something I'm going to do. But 4,800 is it's hard not to at least consider him. Anyway, with that said, you ready to move on to the next one?
Let's keep it rolling.
Let's roll. We got Atlanta at Toronto. This is an interesting game. It's got a 207.5 over/under. Toronto's favored by only 8, which sort of shocks me. I might actually have to put a little money on the side on Toronto to cover that because I could see a massacre here. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where Atlanta, I think last night, it was basically the Schroeder show. And it's one of those things where I think they were sitting guys in the second half.
Yeah, well, they were down by 36 points. I mean, they ended up losing by 36. So I don't even know how Schroeder got his points, but somehow he did. Who are you looking to target in this game, this Toronto-Atlanta matchup?
Lowry.
No Millsap, by the way. I probably should have thrown that in. We know Millsap's not playing.
Yeah, that definitely changes things a little bit. Lowry and DeRozan are obviously elite TPP plays and very good cash game plays. I have an unbiased love for Lowry, so I won't explain anything there. But DeRozan, I mean, he's pretty safe, even though most of his points come from just straight up real life points. I think that he's a great play. Schroeder is a pretty good option after seeing what he did last night. I would like to think that his usage will continue with Millsap out of the lineup. And DeMarre Carroll is a pretty decent play. But other than that, I don't really have a whole lot of interest on anyone from the Hawks side besides Schroeder.
Do we have confirmation for sure? I mean, I believe Carroll's going to play, but we don't have confirmation yet, do we?
I think we do. I'm not entirely sure. Someone in chat, go ahead and tell us that. But I'm pretty sure that he's going to play.
All right. Well, we're going to go assuming that he is. If not, Norman Powell obviously becomes interesting just because of his price and what he did yesterday. It's a funny game because they're both coming off back-to-backs. And I'm having trouble with watching what Detroit did in Atlanta last night. I'm having trouble understanding how Atlanta's supposed to keep this game close exactly. And Toronto's also coming off a blowout win, so none of their guys, they should be rested up enough because I think Lowry played 30 minutes last night, which is not too many for him. There's a lot of guys in this game who I think you could make arguments for, but it's really, what do you think? How do you think the game's going to play out? And I don't know. I personally think Toronto's going to beat them pretty handily. Assuming the game stayed kind of close, I think Bazemore's interesting. I think that Schroeder is obviously interesting. Lowry and DeRozan both make sense, especially on DraftKings, obviously, where their prices are incredibly reasonable. The matchups are great. Dwight Howard could get some a usage bump in Millsap. I can say for myself, this is not a game I'll be targeting or using any players from in most of my tournaments. I might have a little bit of Schroeder, but even Valanciunas is not in the worst spot in the world for 5,500, but I don't know. It's just not a game that I'm all that excited about. There's some bigger games later on that I think I'm going to spend my money on. But if we had to rank 5 players, who you going, Grant?
Number 1, Lowry. Number 2, DeRozan. Number 3, Schroeder. And then I'm just staying away.
Yeah, I would go number 1, Schroeder. Number 2, Lowry. Number 3, DeRozan. Number 4, Dwight. And number 5, Bazemore. But let's move on to the next one, which is another interesting kind of weird game, the Boston at Philly game. So obviously whenever Philly plays, everybody on the other team is in play. The question is, how close will the game stay? Maybe the back-to-back, coming off the back-to-back, will help. There's no Joel Embiid tonight, so we don't get to play the guy we love to play. And it's it should open up some things in their front court. I'm not sure how much exposure I want to that, but how about you, Grant? Who do you like in this game?
I think on the Celtics side with Embiid, I think Horford, just a great play. I think Crowder, he's been putting up pretty good numbers lately, and his price is still a spot where I think he's absolutely viable. And Thomas is one of my favorite plays of the night. I mean, this is going to be a great spot for all 3 of those guys, and I could easily see playing Bradley too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think that Horford, maybe it worries me a little bit of the back-to-back because he's – he doesn't. I don't know. He tends to get worn down. He doesn't tend to put two good games in a row together. And he had a massacre game last night against Sacramento and Boogie. He had 58. All the projection systems I've run today have him around 45. So at 6,500, it's pretty ridiculous. I don't see 45 from him, but I do think that 40 is really a realistic possibility. But this is another game I'm not overwhelmingly excited about, but I agree with the players you mentioned. I think Sergio Rodriguez is in play even in a bad matchup, just because he's fairly consistent since they've had their injuries, and he should get a little bit of a usage spike. Everybody should on the Philly side of the ball without Embiid. Covington is well known for getting a nice little spike, and he's a guy who he's still questionable for tonight. But oh wait, you know what? I just got the note that he's doubtful, so it's going to be a real massacre. There might be some value on that Philly side of the ball. I mean, Rodriguez should go up. Maybe Ilyasova. Any thoughts on those guys? Maybe Saric.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to. I see the logic behind it, but I'm just not going there. I'm not going to touch any of them, I don't think.
Yeah, obviously not for cash. I was sort of thinking for long shot GPPs, but yeah, I would agree. It's not something I'm overwhelmingly excited to play anybody from this game. I do think that Avery Bradley and Jay Crowder are probably my 2 favorite plays in this game. Isaiah's in a great spot as well, but I think Avery Bradley could play 35 minutes, even if the game was a blowout. He tends to eat up a lot of minutes. He'll start the fourth quarter and maybe come out a few minutes in, but he could get 33 to 35 minutes, and that 6,200 price tag looks pretty juicy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we're not in love with this game. I think we are both in love with the next game, even though the rest of the world may not be, but it's the Lakers at Memphis, and this is a really interesting spot for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of value out there. There's a lot of players missing from the Memphis side especially. This is not as good a Memphis defense, although it's better than it used to be. The over-under opened at 205 and has dropped down to 199. Memphis is only a 2.5-point favorite. I think this is going to be a good, close, interesting game. Who are you liking in this game, Grant?
No, there's so many plays I want on this team.
Let's go down the list.
All right, so the entire Grizzlies starting lineup, I have no problem with any of them. Pretty much, besides Gasol, I wouldn't play him in cash, but every other guy is cash game playable, and all of them are definitely tournament options.
Let me jump back to Gasol for a second. Why isn't Gasol playable in cash?
I mean, I just think there are better better spots to go, and I want a lot of exposure to this game. So a lot of my cash game lineups are going to have multiple Grizzlies in them, and so I wouldn't really want Adam as a third or fourth option. And I believe there's other places that you can go. I want to play a lot of Whiteside, but we'll get to that later. So it's not a horrible idea in cash, especially if you're not using many other guys from the game. But I wouldn't go there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love Gasol for cash. I love Gasol in GPPs. But I also think that what you said is true. There's some really good big man options. We already mentioned one with Cat, but he's obviously been priced way up throughout the industry. And Whiteside we'll get to later. But those are some great options. So I can see why you wouldn't want to play him. But I think Gasol is in a great spot against this Lakers front line. I don't know how they keep him below 35 tonight. I think the game stays close. I agree that you could actually stack 4 players from Memphis in the same lineup. I have no problem with that tonight. The Lakers, it's a pace-up game for Memphis, not for the Lakers, obviously. But, it's Gasol. It's you've got, Harrison is a good play. 5,200, his price came up a little bit, so maybe not so much. JaMychal Green, I think, is a great cash game play. I don't love him for tournaments on DraftKings. I think he's better suited maybe where he's a little cheaper on FanDuel. But I don't know. It's on the Lakers side of the ball, I have a little bit of trouble. One other guy I want to mention, Troy Daniels, Troy Williams. The Troys are both interesting in this game to me too. I prefer Troy Daniels just because of the price. I think Troy Williams has upside, even though he hasn't shown a ton of it lately. I think I can go on and on. Other than that, though, there's only one Laker that I feel really interested in playing, and that's Brandon Ingram. Who do you like on that side of the ball?
Ingram, I think, is a great play, like just an absolutely fantastic play.
All formats?
I'd be a little bit more hesitant in cash, but yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Lou Williams is a very good play. Clarkson's a pretty good play. Randall, there's someone that might not be playing that could really increase Randall's role. Was it Nance? If Nance doesn't play, I think Randall's an elite GBP play. But this game, I'm most interested in doing a full game stack and then throw 4 or 5 guys from this game in your lineup, and then you can pay up at multiple other spots from other games. You can do a 2-game stack, a 5-person stack, and then a 3-person stack with elite options from the Golden State game, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It does allow you to save money and spend up on the, whether it's the Golden State game or the Portland game, whatever guys you want to pay up for later. But I agree. Julius Randle, even if Nance is playing, actually, I probably should have mentioned him earlier. I think he's in a pretty good spot. It's a little bit deceptively good spot, but his usage should be pretty high tonight. And I really like him. And I think that Ingram is going to be in a huge portion of my lineups tonight. So I think this is a game's got a lot of people to love. I'm not even going to have you rank anybody because we like about 8 players in this game. But maybe you don't want to go crazy with it, but I have a hard time thinking that I'll have any rosters that won't have at least 1 or 2 players from this game. Yeah. Let's jump on to the next one, which is Chicago at Dallas. And that's a kind of a weird one for me, but you got what is the over-under at right now? 190.
Yeah, not very high.
Yeah, it's a weird spot, but see, for me, Dwayne Wade's out. Jimmy Butler's right there. He can put up even in a slow pace, low scoring game, he can put up 50 or 60. I think he's an interesting play in this game, even with everybody gone. My only fear is how is Dallas going to keep it close?
I don't know. It's on the Dallas side of the court. This is just an ugly game, and I have almost zero interest in anyone there. Wesley Matthews, I think, is in play, but that's it. That's it.
And I'd like to understand one thing real quick. Why did the spread open at 7, Chicago -7, and now is Chicago -3.5? We knew Dwayne Wade wasn't going to play already. Is there anything else I'm missing here? Because I certainly haven't seen anything else, but there's no reason to me why this game, why Chicago should be favored by only 3.5. But you never know. Hey, those Vegas guys know what they're doing. So,
yeah, a lot of money could have come in on the Dallas side. I don't know why it would have, but I don't really see why this line is as close as it is.
Yeah, and it's funny because on the Dallas side, I actually think there's some good value. Jonathan Gibson's in a great spot for 3,500 with no Seth Curry tonight. He played 27 minutes the other night at Charlotte. They had 24.5 fantasy points, and again for 3,500 at a shooting guard position that's not that exciting. He's an interesting play to me, and I think that you could maybe make an argument for a couple other guys, even though they're not all that exciting. Maybe Harrison Barnes because of the usage. Not crazy about paying 6,400 for him, but I think there's this game's got a couple guys worth it. Is there anybody I'm missing that really stands out in this game to you?
I mean, on the Chicago side, I mean, with Wade out, Butler's usage is going to go way up. Rondo's pretty much a must play in both formats, I think. I mean,
Really?
He's been putting up monster numbers lately.
Yes, but this is a very different kind of game. But I mean, he's been a terror lately. But I don't know if it's going to happen tonight.
I think he's projected like three guys from this game. I think according to Jamino's ownership projections are projected at 25%. Mirotic is projected at 30. Butler and Rondo are both at 25, and Gibson's is still at 15. I think they're all great plays, but I don't know if they're really entirely. You can fade them in GPPs just because of their ownership, absolutely. But they're all great plays outside of that, and I think you can use a lot of them with cash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually think that I would. I'm going to steer clear, knowing that ownership percentages that you just mentioned for my GPPs. I don't really have any interest in Rondo, so the only guy in this game I'm going to play if they're going to be 30% owned is Jimmy Butler. Maybe you can make an argument for Wes Matthews, but not at 30, not at higher ownership. Although I think he'll be much lower owned, just because of the low price tag, and he's been he gets the minutes. If you get a guy who plays 40 minutes and every other game puts up 30 plus fantasy points and sometimes can hit 40. It's kind of interesting if you're playing a bunch of lineups, but not all that exciting. So I think other than Rondo, for me, that's where I stand. Anybody else you want to talk about in this game before we move on?
No, there's nothing. Just the Chicago side of the ball. Play if you want to be chalky. Don't play if you don't want to be chalky.
Yeah, I gotcha. And we got the next one we got is Denver at Utah, which I think is a really interesting game for a number of reasons. We got the injuries to Utah, which makes me like so we have no George Hill tonight. We're still waiting to hear on who are we waiting to hear on? Rodney Hood. This over-under in this game, let me just grab it real quick. For some reason, the computer just hiccuped. And we are at 201, the over-under, which is pretty low for a Denver game. But on the Utah side of the ball, man, I really like Gordon Hayward. I think Gobert is really interesting. I can make an argument on the Denver side for Wilson Chandler. I think Mack is an excellent play at 3,600. He, what did he put up last night? Not an excellent play, but he's a guy who can put up 25 to 35 fantasy points. He put up 26 last night. I should say the night before last in the last game. 26 fantasy points for 3,600 isn't too bad. Who are you looking at, Grant?
So this is going to be one of the games where we disagree on things. I don't really have anyone in play besides Gordon Hayward is one of the best plays on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Will be very heavily owned. We've seen what he's done the last two games. George Hill favors out. It's going to be one of those games again where he's going to put up big numbers, and his ownership is going to reflect that. That was the only problem. I see a lot of people making cases for Barton, but it's not a good matchup. I get it. He's cheap, and I can see the rationale behind it. But his ownership is going to be really high, and I'm going to want to stay away from him. There's really if Hood doesn't play, then that gives a little bit of a boost to a few guys. But I'm going to be, for the most part, staying away from this team other than Hayward, who I should have a lot of exposure to. Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that, Hayward is going to be in a huge portion of my GPPs tonight and my cash games. I just think he's in too good a spot. Even for his high price tag at 7,700, he can put up 50 plus in this kind of a matchup. It's a pace-up game for Utah. And I think that, we disagree, but I think there's a lot of value there. I think Joe Johnson makes an interesting play if we get word that, Hood's out. The other night when Hood and Hill were out, Joe Johnson put up 30. I'm not crazy about his price being raised 500 up to 4,500 now from 4, but I still think he's an interesting play just because of the type of matchup it is. And, when you play Denver, it's a little bit, it's not quite the Coors effect that the Rockets have, or maybe the Suns have, but it is still a little bit. They're a pace-up team, and they're banged up. And I would have interest in their front court if it was a different matchup. But that Utah defense is just too good for me to like too many guys on the Denver side of the ball.
Yeah, well, one guy that I don't think we talked about was Fareed, and I think that he is in play. I'm not going to be using him that much just because I'm going to go other places, but he's definitely in play, and his ownership shouldn't be too high. And with all the injuries that are out there, I don't love the matchup. But it's going to be with Jokic out, he could see some increased usage. And he's put up pretty consistent numbers the last few games.
That's true. And I could see Fareed being okay. And I also see Trey Lyles in some, again, if you're playing 50 tournament lineups that are all, low buy-in ones and long shots and there are 10,000 people in it, take a shot on some of these guys because other people won't be. But other than that, it's not really that exciting of a game. I'm much more interested in the last two we have to talk about. Before we go on, is there anything else you want to add here, Grant?
No, no, not really. I mean, this is one of my least favorite games of the night, and I think I just, besides Gordon Hayward, I think I pretty much confirmed that when I said.
Yeah, and we're really motoring through this thanks to 3 cups of coffee on my end. So
Yeah, I had coffee this morning. It doesn't normally happen. I got the shakes a little bit. I don't know what to do with myself.
I can relate. All right, well, let's move on to Miami at Portland, and I think this is a great, very interesting game. I'm going to let you take it away and tell me your thoughts on the game. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, this is an absolute beaut of a game. I mean, Whiteside going up against Plumlee, that is just an absolute amazing matchup. He has one of the highest ceilings on the entire board tonight. Like, I think that's that's not even an outrageous thing to say at all. Like, he could easily put up 50, 60 in this matchup, and I think that he will. I think this is a good game to game stack. I mean, Lillard's has a real tough matchup going up against Dragic, whatever. And it doesn't matter. This game, if it's going to stay close, he's going to have to put up some points. So I think he's perfect to throw in a game stack. And you can easily, one of my favorite 3-person stacks is Whiteside and Dragic. I just absolutely love this game. And James Johnson, I mean, he's been putting up just incredible numbers lately in the last 2 games. I mean, I don't know if that can continue, but I think that it will. And I think that's worth a lot of GPP flyers tonight to throw him in the lineup. So
Go ahead, keep going.
That's I'll let you go.
No, I look at James Johnson's last 2 games. You know, he had 35 and 33 minutes at Denver. Okay, it's at Denver, but then at Utah, he puts up 40 in 24 minutes. Hard not to think it'd be interesting play against Portland here. So I actually really agree with that. I like that 3-man stack call. I think that James Johnson may get slightly overlooked because his price being raised a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, this is a great game. I don't know how much I'm going to be using players in this game in cash. The 2 guys I will be using in cash are Whiteside and Dragic. Other than that, I know, don't listen to the number 3 ranked, Portland's the 3rd ranked defense versus centers. It's smoke and mirrors. They've played a lot of weak ones so far. They've had guys miss games against them. It's, you're telling me that Mason Plumlee is going to stop Hassan Whiteside. I don't think so. Whiteside is, obviously a little higher priced on DK comparatively. He's a little more expensive than Towns over here, but whereas on FanDuel, he's, I think 1,300 less. But I think Whiteside's a phenomenal play. And I should probably mention this over-under is really climbing. I mean, if there's one thing, if you play daily fantasy a lot, if you play NBA daily fantasy, you understand how important these point spreads are. So it's jumped from 209.5 up to 215.5, and it still seems to be climbing. Portland's a 6.5 point favorite. I don't remember seeing that many Miami games where the over-under was in the 2 teens. Usually you get like a 200 or less over-under when Miami's in the mix, but Portland plays pretty fast. And I could see. I agree with everybody you said in this game. I don't think it matters with Lillard. I think that Whiteside is terrific at stopping people in the paint and help defense, but he's not going to be on the court the entire time. And most importantly, Lillard doesn't need to go to the basket. He can knock down 9 threes in a game. He tends to go crazy, particularly at home. And I think McCollum is a really interesting play. McCollum has been incredibly consistent. He's been awesome lately. He's probably got a slightly better matchup than Lillard does. But yeah, I mean, you could pretty much take all of the top guys. I'm not that interested in Plumlee, even though I think that he's a fine play. He's not going to make any of my lineups because I feel like there's better plays at the position. But there's a lot of really, really good plays in this game. Whiteside, Lillard, McCollum, Dragic, James Johnson. I don't usually take players against Miami, but when you get Portland at home, some teams are, they just are whatever proof. They're defense proof. And Portland can go off against anybody just because they're the volatile style and the way that McCollum and Lillard play. So yeah, this is a game I'm targeting heavy in my GPPs. Not so much for cash, but I would be all over it in my GPPs.
Yeah. We're on the same page. One guy I forgot to mention that I think is worth a mention is Evan Turner. I think he's been putting up pretty decent numbers lately, pretty consistent numbers. And while I'm not nearly as high on everyone else in this game as I am on everyone else in this game, I think that he's worth a few shots, and he's not even remotely out of play.
Yeah, I think for 4,300, and you're putting up 35 fantasy points. I mean, it's volatile. It's a wild way to go, and there's a lot of players in that price range today. But I think that certainly you could throw him into some GPPs. That makes a lot of sense. Also,
we didn't mention Harkless. I think he's a viable option in cash tonight. He's been putting up consistent numbers, and it shouldn't, at his price, it shouldn't be that much of a problem.
All right, well, now we're going to disagree because every one of Harkless's games, these are premier matchups that he was in so far that he's been putting up these numbers in. I don't see that happening against this Miami team. I could be wrong. He has been incredibly consistent. But using him in cash to me, I feel like would be kind of a little bit difficult at 5,400. Even though the numbers have been good lately, it's just Miami is a terrific defensive team, and if I'm going to take a chance on anybody against them, it's going to be guys who can get hot, and especially from long range, not a guy who's tends to thrive in up and down high-paced games, because this game isn't going to be – well, I think it'll be faster paced than most people think it will. It certainly isn't one of the faster-paced games like Harkless was facing against Houston, against Indiana, against New Orleans, against Cleveland. Those are where I feel like those kind of games he really goes off. For me, he's a complete fade, but I understand the logic because his numbers have been there.
Yeah, no, and it's not something it's not the best cash game play of the night, but it is in play for cash.
Yeah, I think that you can consider it for sure. We're going to run by the Phoenix Golden State game, which is the game I think most people will be on, and all over the place they'll probably be on it. This game is a 229 over under, with Golden State being a 16.5 point favorite. Scary, but every game Golden State plays is a blowout risk. This game is probably, I think, nearly a blowout guarantee in my mind, because I really don't see how Phoenix can keep it close in Golden State, who's coming off of a loss against Houston at home. I, of course, thought they'd blow Houston out too, so I could be wrong. But this is a really interesting game, and if you're playing, 100 GPPs, I think you stack this game different ways in 25% of those lineups. That makes sense. Who are you interested in? Let's start off with the cash side of this. Who think's viable in cash?
Durant. That's really the main person I'm looking at, just because I'm going to have a lot of. I just think there are better plays on other games. So for cash, I'm way too worried about a blowout. Durant gets his points every single game, no matter what it seems like. He'll end up with about 50, regardless, even if it is a blowout. Because if it's a blowout, that means he was probably heavily involved anyways. So I'm not really worried about him at all. Like he's a great cash game lock every single night without fail. Whether you're worried about a blowout or not, he's gonna get his points, and he's one of the best cash game plays on the board. Especially with the ability to throw in all those Memphis guys at low prices, it makes them really easy to afford him. And then you can afford Whiteside in there too with all those Memphis guys. So it's really a good night to pay up for Durant, pay up for a few of those guys that are in great matchups with guaranteed points, or Durant that's just in a different category in terms of cash game play throughout the course of the season. But anyone else for cash, I'm not real sold. I think Klay Thompson is a viable option. But again, the blowout worries me. He had a kind of just awful shooting night. I think he shot up 20% or under 20% last game. And it's just that's an aberration there. He's had a lot of bounce back games after putting up that low of a shooting night. And I think against Phoenix last year, he averaged like 35 points per game. So, and I think he had one of like 42 or 45 or something like that. So he's in play in both GPPs and in cash, but there's so many problems in the GPP side of this game. Like if it is a blowout, then it's pretty much in GPPs, you want to have a full game stack here or pick Durant. And that's about it. Cause if it's a blowout, then it kind of just ruins your lineup if you have one or two guys in this game. What are your thoughts?
I kind of agree with that. I think there's some guys who actually their game in a blowout, they could have a massive game. Guys like Brandon Knight. I know that he's going to be less than 1% drafted, probably maybe a couple percent drafted. Yeah, he's 4,700. Maybe he'll be a little higher, but
right now the projections have him at pretty high ownership.
Really?
Yeah, double-digit ownership, I think.
Oh my goodness. Well, then I'm off with my prediction of that. But the last time I was told double-digit ownership, he was 0.7% drafted, and I had him in all my lineups, which worked out really well because I think he put up a 45 or so that night. But I don't know. I don't know for sure that. Wow, that's knowing that I'm less into him. I was much more into it when I thought he was going to be a 2%er, 1-2% guy. But yeah, I think that your point with Klay makes sense. I think he's a totally viable. In fact, he was 4 for 20, and he still basically almost hit value in his last time out against Houston. Now, granted, that was a double overtime game and a high-scoring game, but this game is going to be a high-scoring game as well. I think Klay is safe for 30. I think that, other than that, it's hard for me to love anybody but him or Durant for cash. I think that Curry, you could make an argument for cash. It's a great matchup. It's a perfect spot. He's going to be really, really highly drafted, I think, both in cash and GPPs. And at only 9,100, this guy can put up 60 anytime. He's an interesting play tonight. I really like Curry, and I think that if you're going to stack this game somewhat, you have to have Draymond Green. It's the kind of game that really lends itself to Green's skill set, fast paced, up and down. Obviously Golden State plays that way anyway, but Phoenix is a Phoenix, Golden State, Houston, these are the teams that that are huge pace-up teams, and the Lakers, I guess, too. I really, really like the spot for him if the game stays close. He's probably my favorite play if the game stays close because he could put up 60 for 8,200 rather than Durant, who will put up 60 for 10-7. Yeah, there's we know it's the usual suspects tonight. I thought Brandon Knight was a little sneaky. Apparently I'm wrong. But I do think that he's an interesting play. Other than that, I don't know who else I would want to use in this game. I don't have much interest in Bledsoe, although if the game stays close, he should certainly be he should be in a stack if you're making one. I think maybe Booker has a long shot play, but I don't love his price, and he's so scoring dependent. But then again, he can light it up for 35, 40 points, real points anytime. Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you want to do. If there's one guy, if I was forced to rank my players for cash in this, it would go Durant, Curry, Clay, Draymond. I probably don't want anybody else for cash. I don't even want any of those guys for cash. I'm just saying I had to.
Gosh, Draymond, playing Draymond in cash kills me every single time. I don't think I've ever had it work out, like not one time.
Yeah, it's been a bad year for him for cash because he hasn't been as consistent as he was last year. But yeah, I mean, and the thing is, when they played before, he had 50 against Phoenix the last time out. So I'm sort of looking at that. That's interesting to me. I do like the head-to-head matchups. Durant also had 50, which is pretty much his norm. And what did Steph have in that first matchup? He had, I believe, 51. Yeah, 51. This game was in Phoenix, and it was much closer than I think this game's probably going to be. But I'm pretty sure that Bledsoe had a massive game as well. Let me double check. No, he didn't. I don't remember who it was for them, who kept them in that game. Maybe it was Booker. But anyway, yeah, I don't think anything's wrong for GPPs in this game, but I don't know how much interest I have in cash. And personally, because of the ownership percentages, I'm probably going to be fading this game almost fully in my GPPs, but I'm not playing a ton of, if I was playing 150 lineups tonight, of course I would put a bunch of these guys in, but I'm not playing as many tonight as it's a Saturday. But I don't know. It's an interesting spot. Certainly a game that is going to win or lose you a GPP tonight. You'll either have no chance or you'll run away with it if you fully stack this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. So if you were going to do a full game stack on this, who are the guys you're picking?
Good question. For me, because of the price, and I'm not going to be able to use Durant probably. I'm going to take Curry. I would take Draymond. I would take Brandon Knight. I would take maybe Clay or maybe Booker. I don't really know who else. It's probably just the only guys I want. If you can't really full game stack much more because just the price. There's no real low end options except for Brandon Knight, and that's really going to pay off. Maybe PJ Tucker, but that would be reaching to me. What about you? Who would you take?
I mean, I'd probably go. You have to have Draymond. You always have to have Draymond. I would probably go Durant, Knight, and I mean, if this game's gonna stay close, and that means Phoenix is gonna have to put up a lot of points. I think that makes Booker a very viable option in a full game stack. Because I mean, you have to see how the game's gonna play out. If it's gonna be close, a lot of points are gonna be scored unless somehow Golden State has just a terrible shooting night, which we've seen before, but it's not that often. So I think that Booker is definitely in play just because of the amount of points that he may need to put up in order to keep this game close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. If it's going to stay close, one of Booker or Bledsoe you'd think would have to go off. Although oddly enough, none of them did in the first matchup. So I'm really wondering where those points came from. I didn't watch that game. It was about, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, but somehow they managed to hang in there the whole time. And yet nobody really seemed to have a big fantasy night against them. So I don't really understand where the points came from, but obviously tonight it could be any of these guys. They're all extremely volatile and have huge upside on the Phoenix side of it, and they're pretty consistent and have huge upside on the Golden State side of it. But yeah, I'm using the Miami-Portland game as my pivot to this game personally. That's just where I'm going to go. And the Lakers and Memphis, where I don't mind doing a stack of that game too. You don't need to stack all these guys. All these games. I'm just saying there's a couple guys playable from each team in all those games that I feel like are going to be on my rosters. Anyway, so instead of since we've already gone through, we really breezed through the slate by game. Why don't we try to talk about some guys we've missed and some of our just overall favorite plays again. We'll run through them again because not everybody listens to this show beginning to end. The guys who are coming in now, let's give them some help. So, who name some of your favorite plays tonight? Either off the board, popular, whatever.
I mean, yeah, we already mentioned all of them. Walker is a great play. A lot of the guys from the Boston game are a great play. Thomas, Crowder, Horford, like those are all because of the injuries and the fact that Embiid's out, and because they're playing Philadelphia, it makes them a great play. And multiple guys on the other side because Embiid are out and good play. I don't know if we mentioned Okafor at all. What are your thoughts on him with Embiid out? I know he played 28 minutes last night, so you're always kind of worried about how much playing time he's going to get on second of a back-to-back. What are your thoughts on him? I think he's a good cash game option.
I mean, that's interesting to call him a cash game option. I see where you're coming from. To me, it still seems very risky, even against that Boston front line being weaker. But with Horford there, it's just, I don't know. I'm not going to go there myself. Horford's 1,300 more. If I'm going to use somebody, I'm going to use him in this game, in that game. I don't know. It's just Okafor. Just I never get excited about using him in tournaments, and I certainly don't feel excited about using him in cash. It's just like we talked about earlier. I think there's just better options at the center position tonight, and I do think it's a GPP night that does lend itself towards some semi-stacking, because one of these games is going to stay close and people are going to go off. Maybe it's Minnesota Charlotte, maybe it's Portland Miami. I just don't think this Boston Philly game is all that appealing. Although I think that there's a couple guys I would use. It's just I don't know. I'm not a big Okafor believer yet.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's understandable. I just in the spot tonight with Embiid out, and like it remains to be seen how many minutes he's going to be into playing. But I think that he's still in a great spot.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. And I think it's funny because I'm looking through my lineups as we're talking about this, and there's a lot of guys who I have that might, I assume other people are going to be on to, but my value plays are very solid. I like Mac. I think Mac's a very logical play against Denver without Hill. Even if Hood plays, if Hood doesn't play, I love the play. I think Jonathan Gibson's in a really good. It's not a good spot. He's 3,500. If he plays around 30 minutes, which I believe the last time out he played 26 and a half. So yeah, it's a good spot for him to get to 20 and let you pay up for the big guys. I think Batum is going to – I mean, I don't think he's going to be sneaky, but I think that he's got a huge upside in this type of a game. Even though Kidd-Gilchrist is an awesome defender, I don't think that's going to really affect him directly as much. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if they put a little bit of MKG on a little bit of him on help me out, Kemba Walker. That makes a lot of sense to me. If I was coaching them, I certainly would have MKG on him a little bit because I don't really love the Rubio defense, whatever. Anyway. Yeah. I'm sorry, not MKG. Excuse me. I think they put a little bit of Wiggins on him. Wiggins is actually one of the best on-ball defenders and very underrated because of his length. You could see a lot of this game going a lot of different ways. Anyway, I think there's one other guy who I'd like to mention who we didn't talk about much, and LaVine, I think, has massive upside in the way this game could play out. A lot of it depends to me on who Batum's guarding. I think he's mostly going to spend his time on Wiggins. And again, you still have MKG, but it's a little bit different because so much of what LaVine does is in transition. And, people say he's scoring dependent, and he has been this year. He hasn't. That's not necessarily the case. His skill set, he should be able to get you some steals to maybe get a help block or two. He just hasn't been doing much of it this year. He does get you a steal a game, but I don't know. I think if there was a game I thought where LaVine could kind of go off, I guess I sort of feel like that a lot of nights, but he put up 51 against Utah the other night and nobody took him. And then against the Knicks in an amazing matchup, he put up 22. So he's sort of you never know what you're going to get, but yeah. You want to win a GPP. Sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah. We went way too quickly here. Let's probably answer some questions.
Chat pulled up? Let's do it.
Yeah, I got the chat pulled up. Still waiting on questions. They're a few seconds behind. I saw some earlier. One of them was Kaminsky versus Green. I think JaMychal Green is just both sides, just way better play.
I astronomically prefer JaMychal Green in every format to Kaminsky tonight. I don't even have any bit of Kaminsky or any interest in him. Having said that, I'll probably go out and get 35, but I just don't see any reason to play him tonight.
Yeah. One guy said Schroeder versus Dragic. Dragon all the way.
All the way for me too. I could see Schroeder definitely a good GPP play. I don't think he's a good cash game play, and a lot of people I think do think he's a good cash game play tonight. I worry. I know he put up 37.5 in a blowout last night, but on the back-to-back, I don't know. I worry a little bit about him for cash, but he does. The price is right, the usage is right without Millsap, so I get it. It's just not the guy who I'm going to be using.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Knight or Ellington in cash? I think you go Ellington in cash. I mean, Knight's not really the safest thing. That game could be blowout. I don't know how much that'll affect Knight's minutes, but Knight's not the most consistent guy in the world.
I have no interest in Ellington for cash. If I had to play one of them, I would play Knight, but I won't play either of them for cash.
All right. Roddick or Turner? Mirotic or Turner? Yeah.
Mirotic or Turner?
Yeah.
Mirotic for me. I think that I know who you were going to take.
Yeah, I don't. It's a toss-up. I'm probably going to side with you.
Yeah.
But it depends on cash or GBP. I mean, Mirotic, his ownership's going to be way too high, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Schroeder, Batum, or Horford? I'm probably going to go Horford there.
I'm going to go with Batum, but I get the Horford thing. I think that he's going to have a little bit of a higher ownership than he should be. He missed a bunch of games and he's playing a back-to-back. It worries me a little bit. And he's streaky, but I think in cash, I would probably still think he's viable, but there's other plays at the position I really like. So either him or Batum are fine. It's a real toss-up for me. I probably prefer Batum slightly in GBPs.
Thompson or Levine, FanDuel cash? Probably. That's a tough one. I'd probably go Thompson, but that's just because I expect him to bounce back big.
Definitely Thompson for cash. Absolutely. Levine can go out there and put up 15 fantasy points. So if it's cash, I'm definitely taking Thompson.
Okay. McCollum or Bledsoe, DK, GPP? It depends on the situation. If you're doing – I'd prefer to play Bledsoe in a full game stack. So it's one of those things where if the game gets blown out, he can easily just ruin your lineup. So I'd like to have at least one or two other guys in there if I'm going to be playing him.
I couldn't have said that any better. That's exactly what I would have said.
Yeah. Let's see. Lillard or Kemba? Kemba all the way. I mean, I think Lillard has a good GPP flyer, but it's obviously a bad matchup, and I prefer to throw Lillard in a full game stack.
I completely agree with you, but I want to make a point. Lillard's much cheaper on DraftKings, so of course, being the contrary person that I am, I'm going to play him on FanDuel, and I'm not going to play him as much on DraftKings because not that I think he'll be chalky. I just want him at really, really, really low ownership because he has that 65, 70 point upside, and it's hard. You don't find guys like that who are going to be drafted as low as he's going to be tonight.
Yeah. One guy just asked James Johnson. I'm just going to say yes.
Just yes.
just yes. Play him.
Yes for GPPs. I would not touch him in cash.
Yeah, no, yeah. Lowry or Walker. I think Walker has a better matchup, has a better play. His ownership's probably going to be a bit higher. If I were doing cash, I might have Lowry instead, but probably Walker in both of those.
I'm way higher on Walker, but I'm not confident that Lowry won't outscore him tonight. I just think Walker has more upside. He's playing at home. He's underpriced. He's a little bit cheaper. It's a good spot for Walker and against that Minnesota team. I don't know. I really like the Walker spot tonight.
Yeah. Dang or Randall, FD cash. If what's his name is out, if Nance is out, then I think I prefer Randall. Oh wait, that's probably a different Randall. I might be fudging.
No,
I might be fudging it up.
I don't know. What other Randall would it be?
I don't know. He's misspelled Randall, I think, then.
Yeah, maybe he just misspelled it. But what's interesting because, there's $600 price difference between them. So if you wanted to save a little bit, maybe I definitely prefer Randall as an overall play. But on DraftKings, where he's $5,700 and he's at $900 cheaper, I think I would probably say that Jang, when you factor in the ownership too being extremely low, is a really interesting play. I don't usually like to play Jang with Towns, but I don't have a problem doing that tonight.
Yeah. Let's see. Who is the safest punt shooting guard tonight for cash?
How much of a punt are we talking? Say what you said did you say a site or just any site?
I think he said FanDuel. I haven't looked at their pricing as much as DK.
Oh, FanDuel's an interesting one because I don't like to play these guys who are the minimum cost guys. Don't do as much for me on FanDuel unless it's an Andrew Harrison. So I'm paying up a little bit at shooting guard on FanDuel. I haven't really used a whole lot of punt plays. Obviously Clarkson's not a punt and Williams is not a punt, but they're pretty cheap and they're in a good spot. Wesley Matthews is way too cheap at 4,800, just on the number of minutes he's going to play. I love Brandon Knight for 4,300. I think that's interesting on FanDuel. I think Tony Allen is interesting, but to say the best one, I don't know. For me, I'd say punt somewhere else, but probably as much as crazy as this sounds, Tony Allen may be one of the safer options. He's been right around 20 points, all the last 4 games since the injuries. I don't know. I think that he's safe enough to be 18 to 23 fantasy points.
Yeah, his price, that he was going to be my pick, so I'm right there with you. With the amount of guys that are injured for Memphis, it's one of those things. I did the same thing last year. I just loved throwing all the Memphis guys in for cash when everyone was injured, and almost always worked out.
And why, by the way, why is everybody on that team always injured? That's another question I have. What's going on?
I think a lot of them have crazy ex-girlfriends that go and just do terrible things to them.
Well, I can relate to that. So anyway, let's move on to let's keep going. Do we have any more QQs?
Yeah, they're playing here. Lou Williams tonight, yes, I think is absolutely in play. You agree?
Wait, did you say Lou Williams?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Taj in play tonight, I think so.
Yeah.
Let's see. Isaiah Whitehead killing my teams. That's not relevant to us right now.
That's a 2 p.m. game that we didn't touch.
Gasol, any good tonight? Yeah, we already went through this a little bit, but he's a good cash game play, and he's a great GPP play. I mean, something's going to have to happen in that game, and he's been putting up good numbers lately and has a pretty darn good matchup tonight. So, yeah, absolutely he's in play. You agree?
If there's one good thing I've messed up on, it's not having enough of Gasol tonight. So I think I completely agree. I think he's a great play in all formats.
Yeah. DK, GPP, utility under 3,800. Let's see who's people from Memphis would be my guess.
I mean, well, you could take Shelvin Mack. You could take Jonathan Gibson. Those are the guys who I've seen to be using. Under 3,800, those are probably my favorite too, unless I'm not thinking of someone else. You could take a shot on Dwight Powell. I don't love that. You could take a shot on Magruder. Magruder makes some sense. He's 3,700 with the injuries they have there. It's not nothing thrilling, but he's going to put up around 20 probably.
All right, let's just do one or two more. Wesley Matthews or Brandon Knight, DK, GPP. I'm going with Knight 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10.
Knight probably would go 7 out of 10 Knight. All
right. Whiteside and Must in cash tonight with a great matchup. I don't know if he's a must. I mean, let's look there. You can go with Towns. I mean, I think White's a better one. It also depends on the pricing difference. If you're going DK, then the pricing difference is not as drastic as it is over on FanDuel. I think FanDuel you do a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know if he's a must. I mean, I could see using Gasol instead. I could see using Horford instead. I don't want to use Gobert, but I could see using him instead. I mean, and even Okafor. There's multiple other options, so it's definitely not a must. But
yeah, in Towns too.
yeah, Towns are the exact same or pretty much the same price.
Yeah.
Let's see. Last one: Butler or Hayward for FanDuel cash. Hayward.
Yes.
I'm going a little bit back.
Flip a coin. Flip a coin. I like both of them. Flip a coin. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what most of we got time for, right? We're supposed to be signing off pretty soon. I just got a note from Grinders. So, Grant, anything else you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
I don't know. I've got nothing off the top of my head. Canada is very close to the U.S. It's geography. That's all I've got. I've got nothing. Not going with coffee in my system.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of coffee, so hopefully people enjoyed our cracked out version of Grinders Live. It's really fun doing this with you, man. I'm always happy to be able to do it. Good luck tonight in all your games. You got any questions, feel free to tweet us, Bobby Fi or Grant, what is your Twitter name? Is it
Neiffer07.
Will you spell Neiffer so people know what you're talking about?
Neiffer.
There you go. All right, for Grant Neiffer, I'm Bobby Firestone signing off saying, hey, good luck in your games tonight, and we will see you later.
See you, kids.